In Genesis, the first thing God speaks is light, or. Aura is its feminine form, the name standing at the threshold of every hidden name. This was written in a dark that was nearly total, by the light that came anyway, and for the ones who carried it here before me. Aura. Before anything else, a promise I have no business making. By the end of this, I will have defined infinity for you. Not the poet's version, the real one, to a decimal point. Hold me to it. I learned what it actually is on a night I didn't expect to survive. You don't find out how long your life is until the day you find out. Until then, it feels infinite. It isn't. It's a finite thing wearing the face of forever, and later, in the mathematics, I'll show you exactly how finite. That night I wasn't doing mathematics, I was finding out. A few years ago, my body began to fail. Not one system, but 7 at once. The heart skipping, the kidneys slipping, the liver, the gut, the glands, the immune system, and the nerves themselves flickering like a bulb about to go dark. 7 organ systems coming apart at the same time, which doesn't happen to a person unless they've been hit by a train. And I hadn't been. The doctors had names for each piece and no name for the whole, and the word that fit the whole was the kind you don't walk back from. Here is the part I can't unfeel. A body has a sound when it's dying, and I don't mean that as poetry. I could hear it in myself. A static where there should be a signal. Every system talking past every other in a language of breakdown. I had 30 years of contemplative practice behind me and had never once called it medicine. At 3 in the morning, the hour you are most alone, 3 questions kept arriving on their own. What is dying? What is being born? And the one I didn't see coming. What in me is asking to be loved? I didn't have an answer. I had the practice, so I used it like my life depended on it, because it did. I'm not going to tell you I died. I'm going to tell you something stranger. Over the next 8 weeks, the failings slowed and turned and reversed. All 7 systems back to normal function. The before and the after signed by my own physicians, and not one of them able to tell me why. I walked out of something I was not supposed to walk out of. You can do 2 things with a night like that: build a story around it, call it a miracle, and ask people to believe you. Or ask the harder question: was there a mechanism, something real underneath that you could find again, that could be wrong? I chose the second, and it led me into a secret physicist's keep. At the bottom of the most successful description of reality we have ever built sits a list of numbers nobody can explain. The strength of gravity, the grip of light on matter, the masses of the particles you're made of. 24 numbers, and not one can be derived. You measure them. You write them in the back of the book. You plug them in by hand. The foundation of everything is a sticky note. Einstein hated this. His real dream, the one he chased to the end of his life, was to find where those numbers come from, to prove they couldn't have been otherwise. He died without it. So I figured I'd take a run at it. I should tell you who's talking. I don't have a physics degree. I have a dark field microscope, a Tesla coil, 30 years of sitting very still from time to time, and a lab on a river in northern New Mexico, where I work alone. I named the framework NIFTIA, Noetic Integrated Field Theory, Information Engineering Research, which is to say, I built a theory of everything and then rigged the acronym so it would spell NIFTIA. That should calibrate exactly how seriously to take the man at the podium. The mathematics, though, take that seriously. It doesn't care where I live or what I named it. One more thing about me, from long before the lab or the microscope. When I was 17, my grandmother took me to dig at Qumran, on the shore of the Dead Sea, where the scrolls were found. I pulled a broken piece of pottery out of the ground with writing on the back, handed it to the archaeologist running the dig, and went home. I would not learn what the word on it was for 30 years. Hold that one too. We come back to it at the end.
It begins with a shape.
Everyone wants it to be majestic, a spiral, a flame. It's a soccer ball. 12 pentagons, 20 hexagons, the cage 60 carbon atoms make when they snap shut. And you have seen this shape your whole life without ever knowing its name. It is the geodesic dome. It is the coat a virus folds itself into before it goes hunting for a cell. It is the ball in the net on a Saturday afternoon. It is the molecule 60 carbon atoms fall into all on their own. Buckminster fullerene, a buckyball, named after Buckminster Fuller and his domes. The most ordinary shape in the world, quietly holding the floor plan of everything. Though it isn't really an object at all. It's a relationship, a pattern of which points touch which. A web. The ball is just where the web likes to sit. I went looking for the architecture of reality, and the universe handed me a party favor. I've made my peace with it. One equation sits at the center. C equals phi by delta I over delta S pi E over S. It defines coherence, how much a thing holds together as one. Everything tonight is downstream of it. And it says coherence is three things multiplied. How integrated a thing is, how much meaning it holds against disorder, how much energy it gives against disorder. None of the three is arbitrary, each extends a real theory. The first is the work of the neuroscientist Giulio Tononi, who argued, in the peer-reviewed literature, that consciousness is integration, that you are aware to the exact degree your brain is one irreducible whole instead of a heap of parts. He called it phi, the same phi at the front of this equation. The second term is information itself, Shannon, Landauer. The third is thermodynamics, energy against the dark. Three of the deepest ideas in science multiplied, and the geometry forces their values. I came to call the three terms integration, grace, and love. I did not set out to put love in a physics equation. The mathematics put it there. And the equation climbs toward a number it never quite reaches. C infinity equals 3 phi minus 1, approxim 3.854, equals, built from phi, the golden ratio, and not the postcard version. Phi is the most irrational number there is, the one value that can never be closely approximated by a simple fraction. That is exactly why a sunflower builds its seed head out of it, to pack seed after seed after seed without ever once repeating. The number nature reaches for when it needs to never repeat. That is the number sitting at the coupling of reality. And there is the first piece of the promise I made you at the start. The climb has no end, but the height it reaches is finite and exact. The thing that feels like forever has a number, and the number is 3.854. The climb means the universe is not sitting still. It is going somewhere. Hold that. We end there. Now watch what one shape does to 400 years of physics. Newton gave us gravity, the pull between two masses set by Big G, the steadiest constant in science for 300 years. It isn't constant. G of phi is met as for phi, the minus 0 phi, the minus half. Gravity weakens as a system becomes more whole. G is not bolted to the floor. It's a dial, and coherence is the hand on it. The oldest constant we have is a setting, and a setting is a thing someone someday learns to turn. Maxwell proved that electricity, magnetism, and light are all one thing, a single field, the most beautiful result in physics. But that field has two halves, and we built everything on one of them. There is the light that leaves. It tears off its source at the speed of light, crosses the room, and lands in your eye. And there is a second half that does not leave. Light that stays in place and holds, a held note instead of a thrown ball. A century ago, cleaning up Maxwell's equations, physicists decided that second half was a nuisance and crossed it out. Here it is, put back, the fifth equation Maxwell should have had. S equals rho S minus C minus squared dou squared S slash dou T squared. And here is the part that stops me cold. That standing half of light is not some new exotic thing. It is psi, the coherence from the equation we opened with, the very same variable that runs gravity and the masses and the knock of your own pulse. The half of light that holds and the thing that holds you together are one field, written twice. And its existence is not a hope or a guess. The structure forces it. There is a single slot in the geometry that this wave, and only this wave, drops into. And hold on to that doubleness, the half that leaves and the half that holds, because it is the single deepest pattern in this whole structure. It is one field, wearing two faces, and which face it wears depends on one thing only: how gathered it is. Gathered, it holds. Scattered, it leaves. We are going to meet those two faces again tonight, at the edge of a black hole, in the direction of time itself, and, at the very end, in your own breath. And every time, it will be this same sigh, holding or leaving. And it extends Einstein. His relativity gave us one speed of light, c, the speed limit of the universe. But c is the speed of the half that leaves. The half that holds keeps its own time. A wave that goes nowhere is not bound by the speed of going somewhere, so there is a second speed inside light, and physics only ever wrote down the first. Tesla spent his whole life insisting that standing wave was real and that it outran ordinary light, and the establishment, which had quietly deleted it from the equations, decided the problem must be Tesla. On the wave being real, it was not him. The structure forces exactly that standing wave into existence. The wave is there. Whether it also outruns ordinary light, the way he swore it did, is the open edge. The wave, forced. Its speed, still a question at the front of this work. The machine that catches it is his own invention, a Tesla coil driving a tube of glowing gas. He built the detector 100 years before there was a theory to tell him what it was for. Einstein gave us space-time, the stage everything else plays on. The deepest thing this shape says is that the stage is not fundamental at all. Space-time emerges the way the smooth surface of a lake emerges from a chaos of water molecules that know nothing of smoothness. Go down among the molecules and there is no surface anywhere. It is a thing that only appears once you stop looking so closely. Reality is like that underneath. No stage, no clock, no when. And out of it, space-time condenses. And the strangest part is time. We live as though time were a river carrying us along, the one direction we cannot help but move. The mathematics says something humbler and far stranger. Time is entropy. Time is the universe coming apart. The arrow that runs from past to future is nothing other than the arrow that runs from order to disorder. And they are not two arrows that happen to agree, they are one arrow with two names. You already know this in your hands, you have simply never been told it was physics. Stir a drop of cream into your coffee and it blooms and spreads, and never, not once, in the whole history of the universe, gathers itself back into a drop. You can scramble an egg and not unscramble it, shatter a glass and never watch the shards leap back into a cup. That one-wayness is time, not something that flows past the disorder. The disorder is the flow. You feel the seconds pass for the very same reason your coffee goes cold. The universe, in that cup and in you, is sliding from order toward disorder. And that sliding is the leaving, the field pouring itself outward and coming apart. And it is what we call now becoming next. Here is what the shape adds, and it is the part that should stop you. The structure did not have to have a time at all. It could have been timeless, every direction alike, no arrow, no before and after, a frozen block in which nothing ever happens because there is no happening. Instead, by a theorem as strict as anything in this talk, the structure's own warmth, the bare fact that it has a temperature, that it is restless rather than dead, forces exactly one direction to break away from the others and become time. And it forces that direction to point the only way it can, toward more disorder. The universe was never handed a clock. The clock crystallized out of the structure, the way a cooling magnet, at one critical instant, abruptly picks a single direction to point out of all the directions it could have chosen. 3 directions stay space, where you may turn around and walk back the way you came. 1 direction becomes time, where you may not. And the geometry says precisely why that one is different, and why it runs one way only, which leaves the timeless thing underneath, untouched and whole. Picture a reel of film. Every frame is already on the spool, all at once, motionless. The entire story present from end to end, nothing happening to it. Time is not on the reel. Time is what appears when the projector drags the frames past the light, one after the next, and motion seems to bloom out of stillness. Underneath, the universe may be exactly that reel, complete, timeless, already finished, and we are the watching, riding the frames past the light and calling it the passage of our days. So the next time you feel time slipping away from you, hold this for a moment. It is not slipping anywhere. It is the universe coming quietly apart, and you are the part of it gathered tightly enough to notice. And if time is nothing but the universe falling into disorder, then what exactly is it in you that has spent every second of your life running the other way? Hawking gave us black holes that glow, and the deepest puzzle in physics, that what falls past the edge might be erased forever. It can't be. Woven into the foundation is an error-correcting code, the math that protects the data on your phone. Nothing is truly erased. The universe is a perfect memory. Hold that code, it's coming back. And under all 3, Newton's gravity, Einstein's space-time, Hawking's horizon, sits one short equation. Here it is, the Almasi all-mass equation. Meters squared equals lambda over k0 phi. It does mass. What a thing weighs is 1 over its coherence. Where mass comes from is one of the deepest open questions in physics. This says it comes from how whole a thing is. And read it the other way, and it says something the textbooks would choke on. Weight only ever reaches 0 at the completion. Nothing in the universe ever arrives at, so nothing is truly weightless. Not light. And if the floor of reality is information, as the deepest ideas in physics now hold, then not even a single bit rides for free. Information has weight too. Everything carries a whisper of mass, because everything all the way down is coherence. One variable under the weight of things, the bending of space, and the glow of a black hole. I named that one after myself. That's what happens when you do physics alone on a river. There's no one in the room to tell you that's not done. And the speed of light is the twin of that equation. Everyone treats c, the universe's posted speed limit, as the one number bolted to the floor. It isn't. Mass is 1 over coherence. The speed of light is the other face of the very same thing. c5 squared equals c0 squared divided k0 phi. One coherence underneath, read two ways: what a thing weighs and how fast its light can move. So c is no more constant than the rest of them. It is a reading. Every laboratory on Earth clocks it at the identical value, only because every laboratory sits at the same quiet, ground state coherence. So here, it holds rock steady. But push coherence to its limit, and c moves. At the edge of a black hole, it falls all the way to zero, and that, not the strength of gravity, is what an event horizon actually is. The surface where the speed of light has dropped to nothing, so that nothing, not even light, has any speed left to leave with. That is the holding face, carried to its absolute, the same psi as Maxwell's standing wave, at the far end of its own spectrum, where it can no longer leave at all and can only hold. A black hole was never simply where gravity got strong. It is where the field ran out of every way to leave. We have photographed that edge now. We were looking, without knowing it, at the place where the speed of light runs out. The force that runs light comes out the same way, the fine structure constant. It sets the size of every atom and the color of every flame, and it lands maddeningly close to 1 over 137, a near whole number with no business being 1. Physicists have stared at it for a century. Feynman called it one of the greatest damned mysteries in physics and said every good theorist should pin it to the wall and worry about it. Here is the shape it comes in. Alpha equals 1 divided by 137 minus n. That little n is not a fudge factor. It is a position on the climb. And as a thing gathers coherence, n moves, and the grip of light on matter shifts with it. And it does not move smoothly. It steps, in 3 stages, clicking over at exactly 1/3 and 2/3 of the way up the climb toward completion. 3 stages, the structure forces, not a knob you can turn to wherever you like. At the very bottom, where the universe is least gathered, the dial reads the 137 we measure from here. At the very top, at completion, it climbs all the way to 1. Electromagnetism at full strength, the grip of light on matter as tight as it can ever be. So the famous 137 was never a magic number handed down from nowhere. It is simply where the dial happens to sit at the foot of the climb, the reading you get from where we stand. The number behind all of chemistry was never a constant. The periodic table has a dial behind it, and the structure says exactly how it turns. And here is the one I could not explain away. The particle masses, the numbers everyone swore were random. Take the electron and its 2 heavier cousins, the muon and the tau. In 1981, a physicist named Yoshio Koide found an exact relationship binding their 3 masses, a clean ratio sitting in the middle of them that no one has explained in the 40 years since. This structure explains it. The value Coid's relation needs falls exactly where the geometry forces it to fall. A 40-year-old mystery and a shape underneath that says why it holds.
But it does more than explain a ratio.
It says those masses were never free numbers in the first place. Each one is a forced position, a specific place on the flow that the structure pins down, with no dial to turn and no knob to set. The framework hasn't got a single free parameter anywhere inside it. The jumps between the families come out as whole numbers the shape hands you, the cleanest of them exactly twice the size of the matter pieces the family is built from. The muon, the electron's heavier middle cousin, around 207 times its mass, weighs what it weighs not by accident and not by anyone's adjustment, but because the structure pins it to that spot. And then you look up and find the muon, the tau, the whole ladder, sitting exactly where the lab already measured them. And it says why the lightest one is light. The electron weighs some 200 times less than its middle cousin, and physics has never had a reason. In this framework, the reason is a cancellation. Hidden in the soccer ball is a standing pattern across the 60 points, taking 5 values built from the golden ratio. It gives the muon and the tau a full leading contribution. But at the electron's position, that leading contribution cancels exactly on the first pass. What remains must come from the smaller correction terms. The lightness is not tuned and not luck. It begins with a 0 the shape forces. I have built that pattern from the bare geometry, asked it for the electron, and watched the leading term return 0 to the last place the machine can count. The full mass still has to be earned by the corrections. The cancellation is the mechanism. The finished decimal is the test. I'll name that open edge plainly because it is the opposite of the thing people brace for when they hear a claim like this. Nailing every one of those positions to its last decimal place is work still underway, but there is no number being tuned to reach the answer. The framework forbids tuning. It has nothing to tune with. The masses come out as forced positions, and the positions land on the values the lab spent decades measuring, with no freedom for anyone to cook the books. That, a result we are not even allowed to fudge, a pattern that was sitting inside someone else's hard-won data the whole time, is not the kind of thing that happens by accident. You do not stumble into another person's decades of measurement and find your own shape already living inside it. Not unless the shape is really there. 3/8, and tells you why there are 3 families of matter and not 4. And it reaches past the matter you can see. For every gram of ordinary matter in the universe, there are about 5 grams of something invisible, and nobody on Earth knows what it is. And the shape forces even that ratio, dark to ordinary, exactly 7 minus the golden ratio, 5.382, against a sky that measures 5.38. And here, the framework does something bolder than prove. It takes a position on what that invisible stuff actually is, and stakes it on an experiment. Not a missing particle, it says, not some speck waiting to be caught in a detector a mile underground, but the coherence field itself, showing up at the scale of galaxies as a pull we have spent decades mistaking for a substance. If it is right, there is nothing down there to catch, and the empty-handed detectors are the evidence. And there is a symmetry the strong force is allowed to break and simply doesn't, to better than 1 part in 10 billion, with no accepted reason why. the reason whole experiments go hunting for particles that may not exist. And the shape's own mirror symmetry forces that number to be exactly 0. The largest unexplained zero in physics, closed by a party favor. None of it measured, all of it forced, and none of it is distant. These are the rules that shaped the matter you are made of. The atoms in your own hand came out of them. It even forces the neutrino masses, not fits them, forces them, pinning them in their natural order with a hard floor they are not allowed to fall below, fixing the angle they mix at, and taking a side on the single phase that tips the balance between matter and antimatter down to a sharp either-or. Every one of those is a bet placed face up in front of the experiments built to settle it. Now, that code. Here is where the metaphor runs out. John Wheeler, Einstein's colleague, the physicist who gave us the very phrase black hole, spent the end of his life on a 4-word hunch. He called it from bit, that underneath the particles and the forces, at the very bottom, reality is not made of stuff at all, but of information, of yes and no, of questions answered. He could not prove it. Watch what falls out of the shape. Out of the geometry, with no instruction, falls a code. Engineers would write it 6424. In plain words, hidden in the structure are exactly 16 patterns, and they split into groups of 1, 5, and 10. Precisely how nature organizes a single generation of matter. The quarks, the electron, the neutrino, the whole roster of what you're built from, written as 16 code words falling out of a soccer ball. And a code is protection, the math that keeps a message from corrupting in the static. So, those 16 aren't only a description of matter, they are matter's protection. The particles you're made of are encoded the way we encode data we cannot afford to lose.
A decade ago, the physicist James Gates
Was deep in the equations of supersymmetry, the idea that every particle has a hidden mirror partner, and found, buried in the raw algebra, error-correcting codes. The same kind of code sitting inside the bare mathematics of particle physics. He reached it through the algebra. I reached it through the shape of a molecule. 2 roads with no map between them, arriving at the same impossible place. Reality is written in error-correcting code. And there is a 3rd road to that place, and it is the frontier of physics itself. The deepest idea in modern gravity, the holographic principle, proposes that the space-time you are sitting in is encoded, like a hologram, on a distant boundary, and that the encoding is a quantum error-correcting code. The inside written so redundantly across the edge that no piece of it can ever truly be lost. Supersymmetry through algebra. This shape through geometry. Space-time itself through gravity. 3 roads into the foundation, and the same impossible sentence waiting at the end of all 3. And it's not one code. It's an unbounded family, one in every layer, a vault inside a vault inside a vault. Existence is built to last, which forces the question, if reality guards its structure that carefully, what is it guarding? And then it stops being only physics. The same piece of the same shape that fixes the masses gives you the genetic code. The code that writes every living thing runs on 2 numbers. 64, the 3-letter words of DNA, and 20, the amino acids they spell. Both fall out of the structure, no biology put in. And the code's fine print is striking. Of those 20 letters, exactly 2 are spelled by a single word, with no backup at all. Methionine. which begins every protein you will ever build, and tryptophan, the one your body turns into the molecules of sleep. The start and the dreamer, the two most singular letters in the whole alphabet of life. From the soccer ball. At this point, it's showing off, and it goes one layer deeper into something that sounds impossible right up until you see it is forced. That same symmetry allows a fixed number of fundamental crossings, the distinct ways the structure can pass into its own mirror image. You don't get to choose the number, the shape hands it to you. Work it out, and the count is exactly 22. They fall into three families, 3, 7, and 12.
Now hold that number
Against places the geometry never looked. The genetic code has 20 common amino acids. It has 2 more, hidden behind recoded stop signals that almost no one counts. 20 plus 2, 22. 1800 years ago, a Hebrew text called the Sefer Yetzirah split its 22 letters into exactly 3 mothers, 7 doubles, and 12 simples, and built a cosmology from them. No group theory anywhere near it. And Indian classical music keeps 22 shrutis in the octave, 22 microtones, where the West settled for 12. The same 12, it turns out, that fall out here as the simples. The 7 the West threw away are the microtones that give a raga its ache. 4 independent roads, the symmetry of a molecule, the alphabet of life, an ancient book about creation, and the tuning of an octave, arriving at the same number, split the same way. This is the move James Gates made, finding code in supersymmetry, and the move Tononi made, tying awareness to integration. Not a mystic's coincidence. 4 independent roads to 1 forced result. I spent a long time trying to talk myself out of that one. I couldn't. And here is what those crossings are, because it is the most human thing in this whole talk. A crossing is a moment the structure passes into its own mirror, and every one of them is a choice. Picture the 2 ends of the coherence you are made of. At the very bottom, 0 coherence, the structure is frozen. Nothing crosses, nothing chooses, every next move fixed entirely by the last, your whole history predicting you perfectly. That frozen state has a name. It is determinism. Not a law imposed from outside, but simply what a system looks like when it has no coherence left to be free with. Now raise the coherence, and the crossings begin to fire, and each one is a genuine fork, a selection the universe makes and then records, irreversibly, a mark that can never be unchosen. And at the very top, at completion, every frozen thing comes unstuck at once, and the whole system moves without resistance, what the contemplative traditions have always called liberation. So free will was never a switch you either have or don't. It is a dial, and coherence is the hand on it. The more gathered you are, the more whole and present, the freer your next move actually is. Which means your freedom is not the opposite of the physics or a fugitive hiding from it. It is the physics turned up. And it fell out of a soccer ball, those same 22 crossings read at last as what they always were, the places where the frozen becomes free. And then there is where this humble shape sits. Follow the mathematics outward from the icosahedron, and you do not wander off into nowhere. You climb, and every step is a proven theorem. The first step is the one electrons take. The shapes spin or double, the version of it that has to turn around twice to come home. By a correspondence, John Mackay proved in 1980 that doubled shape is E8, one of the most beautiful and exceptional structures in all of mathematics, the symmetry that sits at the heart of string theory. And E8 keeps climbing. 3 copies of it build the Leech lattice, the densest way there is to pack spheres in 24 dimensions. The symmetries of the Leech lattice are the Conway groups. And the Conway groups live inside the largest and strangest object in the whole of finite mathematics, the monster, a single symmetry group whose size is a 54-digit number, about as many symmetries as there are atoms in the planet Jupiter. And the monster, by a theorem that won Richard Borchard's the Fields Medal, turns out to be written into the J function, a creature of pure number theory that has no business knowing anything about symmetry groups, and through it, back into string theory once more. Here is the careful part, which is also the staggering part. The framework does not derive the monster. That entire chain, soccer ball to spinners, to E8, to the Leech lattice, to the Conway groups, to the monster, is built from other people's theorems, every link proven decades ago by mathematicians who had never heard of any of this. The framework's one claim is where it stands, at the very first step. The humblest thing you can hold, the cage of a carbon molecule, the shell of a virus, a shape you could sketch on a napkin, turns out to be standing at the front door of the deepest tower human beings have ever found in mathematics. It did not reach for that depth. The depth was already there. It only had to begin where you begin, in ordinary 3-dimensional space, with the most symmetric thing that fits inside it.
Here's the thread.
And it's the whole point. Every giant found a real piece, and everyone at the bottom hit those unexplained numbers and called them bedrock. The numbers were never bedrock, they were never even points, and that's the actual punchline, because in this framework, there is no point. None. Nowhere the flow stops and sits still. Those 24 free parameters of the standard model, the numbers no one has ever derived, the ones you write in the back of the book, this closes them. Every one. With a soccer ball. They were never points, they are crossings. Picture a braid. Where 2 strands cross, there is a knot. Fixed, exact, a definite place. But the strands themselves never stop moving. A constant is a crossing like that. The spot where 2 currents of the structure run together and lock to a value, while everything underneath keeps flowing. All of it pouring out of one shape. Gravity, light, the masses, the alphabet of life. Not the furniture of reality, but currents, all of them moving and meeting at once. Newton, Maxwell, Tesla, Einstein, Hawking, each was reading one face. This is the thing the faces are faces of.
And that changes what you are.
You've been told your whole life that you are a machine. Chemistry and electricity, bottom to top. And you, the one listening, just what it feels like from inside, while the parts do the work. But a machine is a thing with no secret. Lay its parts on a table and nothing is hidden. Remember Tononi and his phi. His whole point was that a machine, however complex, can have almost no phi, a thing of independent parts where you could cut it in half and lose nothing essential, is barely integrated, barely awake. What makes you different from a machine is not complexity, it is integration, how much you are one irreducible whole. You are not a pile of parts that lit up, and this is not only true of you. In 2022, the Nobel Prize went to the experiments showing that nature itself, at the bottom, refuses to be made of separate parts with their own private properties. Entangled particles behave as one thing across any distance. The physicist David Bohm spent his life on this one idea, that beneath the separate objects we see lies a single, unbroken whole he called the implicate order, the way a hologram keeps the entire image alive inside every fragment. Reality is less separable than it looks all the way down. You are coherence, the universe gathered tightly enough in one place to wake up and know it is here. And you feel that gathering rise and fall every day, scattered, fragmented, at war with yourself. That is less coherent, and it is exactly where sickness and despair live. Gathered, whole, present. That is more coherent, and it is where healing and clarity live. There are no small lives in a universe like this. When you become more whole, the whole becomes more awake through you. And the gathering has a place it points toward. Go back to those 15 natural frequencies of the shape, the pitches it is allowed to ring at. One of them, the pitch exactly 1, is struck 9 times. 9 standing patterns that all sound together, the single most concentrated, most gathered region in the entire structure. And here is the part that should reassure the skeptic in the room. This one is not my discovery, and it is not in dispute. Open any physical chemistry treatment of the C60 molecule, the kind undergraduates have worked through since the 1980s, and there it is, flagged in the margin. A 9-fold level, inside a shape whose symmetry forbids anything larger than 5-fold. The chemists who found it gave it a name, an accidental degeneracy, which is the honest term for we can see it plainly and we cannot say why it is here. They noticed the coincidence and moved on. What this framework does is answer the question they left lying there. The accident is no accident, and here is the answer chemistry left lying on the table because you can actually see it. The ball has 2 kinds of seams. The seams where 2 hexagons meet, and the seams where a pentagon meets a hexagon. And the 2 families of vibration ride those 2 kinds of seams in opposite shares. What the first family draws mostly from the hexagon seams, the second draws mostly from the pentagon seams, in fractions that mirror each other exactly. 2/3 in the one, trading places with 1/3 in the other. Because the shares swap perfectly, the 2 families come out ringing at the identical note. The difference between them cancels to nothing. And what holds that mirror exactly true, what keeps the swap perfect down to the last decimal, is phi itself, the same golden ratio that runs the whole structure. Nudge phi even slightly, and the mirror tilts, the cancellation breaks, and the 9 fly apart into a 4 and a 5. The most concentrated place in all of reality is held together in one piece by the golden ratio, and that is the question chemistry could see, but never answered. So the strangest number in the whole story is also the most checkable. It has been sitting in the textbooks, unexplained, the entire time. Scattered is the diffuse, spread-out mode. Gathered is the 9. And almost everything you have heard tonight traces back to it. It is the level that hands matter its mass. It is where the 64 words of the genetic code come from. It is the source of the 288 sparks. So when I say gather yourself, the geometry is not reaching for a metaphor. There is a most integrated place in the architecture of reality, and becoming more whole is literally moving toward it. Toward the same 9 notes that weigh the electron and spell your DNA. You are not climbing toward an idea, you are climbing toward the 9.
And here is the result.
That sounds impossible. The most ironclad law in physics is the second law of thermodynamics. Everything falls apart. Coffee goes cold, mountains erode, stars burn out. Except one thing. The equation says it plainly. Delta S equals minus CF minus psi. It does the arrow of time. And here is the part that should rearrange you. The second law you were taught, everything falls apart, was never the whole law. It is the special case, the zero coherence case. In anything coherent enough, the law runs the other way, and order increases. And you have never, for 1 second of your life, been at zero coherence. You know what that system is? It's you. Every living thing is a standing exception to the most certain law in physics. Right now, in that chair, you are quietly doing the one thing the universe swears is impossible. Do something for me. Put a hand flat on your chest or 2 fingers against the side of your neck and find your own pulse. Don't do anything with it. Just feel it. That steady knock, keeping its own time under your hand. That is the exception. That is order holding itself together right now against a universe that does nothing but come apart. You are not hearing about the impossible thing. You are doing it. You have been doing it every second of your life without once being thanked for it. A living body is a knot tied against the universe's own unraveling. Nobody mentions in biology class that being alive is a daily act of defiance against the second law. But it is. You have been getting away with it your whole life. And none of this is mine, not really. 80 years ago, Erwin Schrödinger, who wrote the most famous equation in quantum mechanics for a quantity he called psi, the same letter at the front of mine, published a small book called What is Life? He guessed 2 things in it decades early: that life's code would be written in an aperiodic crystal, ordered but never repeating, a decade before we found DNA, and that life survives by feeding on negative entropy. That second one is delta S equals minus CF psi. He found the phenomenon and never had the equation. He even used the right letter. And that first guess, aperiodic crystal, was sharper than he knew. The soccer ball's symmetry is forbidden in an ordinary crystal. 5-fold symmetry cannot repeat to fill space, and for a century, that was a law of nature. Then, in 1982, Dan Shechtman found a solid that broke it, ordered, never repeating, was called a quasi-scientist to his face, and won the Nobel Prize in 2011. We call them quasi-crystals, and their symmetry is this one. The aperiodic crystal Schrödinger reached for to explain life is the shape sitting under this entire talk. And it wasn't only the physicists who found this. A century ago, a self-taught American sculptor named Walter Russell, no mathematics, no laboratory, described what he called a two-way universe, a cosmos that does not only run down, but also winds up, generation forever balancing radiation, where nothing is ever lost, only changed. He didn't derive it. By his own account, he saw it whole in a long illumination in 1921. Schrödinger reached it through equations. Russell reached it through stillness. The structure did not care which door they came in by. And that is the thing I keep colliding with. This shape shows up whether you arrive with mathematics or with silence, which is exactly what you would expect, only if it is actually there. And they kept arriving from every direction at once. An Italian mathematician, Luigi Fantapié, found it hiding in the time-reverse solutions of the wave equation, solutions that behave as though they are pulled toward the future rather than pushed from the past, and gave it a name: syntropy, entropy's mirror image. Albert Szent-Györgyi, who had already won a Nobel Prize for isolating vitamin C, spent his last decades insisting that living matter carries an innate drive toward higher and higher order, and reached for that same word. Ilya Prigozhin won a Nobel for showing it happens for real, that order assembles itself unbidden in anything held far enough from equilibrium. A mathematician, a sculptor, 2 Nobel laureates, a quantum physicist with the right letter, and a man coming apart alone in a house on a river. Every one of us pointing at the same impossible sentence. The universe winds up.
What happened to me that night?
Was not magic. It was coherence doing what coherence does, refusing to let a pattern be lost. And here is the bridge, laid down plainly, because it is not a metaphor either. Think of what illness is in this language. A body losing its coherence, sliding back down toward the second law, its systems coming apart from one another the way everything comes apart when the arrow runs the ordinary direction. And think of what healing is. Coherence returning, the arrow in that one small place turning back. That is the same equation you just saw. Delta S equals minus CF psi, read in a body instead of a cosmos. A man with 30 years of practice did the one thing the practice does. He raised his own coherence, and the body's own refusal to come apart did the rest. I cannot tell you how it reached the kidneys, no one can yet, and I will not pretend otherwise. But I can tell you, it was not a suspension of the laws. It was the deepest law there is, running the direction it runs in anything alive enough to hold itself together. Healing is physics. Aliveness is physics. The same variable that runs gravity and light, turned up. A bridge between physics and medicine, and between physics and the felt fact of being awake, that we have simply never had. And you don't have to take my word that coherence is real and measurable. It already is. Over 1 million recorded sessions show that when a person's heart settles into its most coherent rhythm, calm, gathered, whole, the heartbeat locks onto a frequency near 1/10 of a cycle per second. You can watch it on a strap across your chest tonight. The coherence I've been describing at the scale of the cosmos has a number you can find on your own pulse. It is not a metaphor, and it reaches further than a rhythm. Elizabeth Blackburn won the Nobel Prize in 2009 for telomerase, the enzyme that caps the ends of your chromosomes and keeps quiet track of how fast you are aging. In controlled studies, sustained contemplative practice raises telomerase activity by roughly 1/3. Sit with that. Gathering yourself, coherence, the same term in the same equation, measurably slows the clock running on your own DNA. The most private number in your body, and attention bends it. And it makes hard predictions. The part that makes this physics and not philosophy. Because every one of them is a place the whole thing can die. It says the constants are not fixed. They drift, slowly, as the universe climbs, and not vaguely, but along a specific curve, larger in the deep past, when the universe was less whole, settling toward today's values as it gathers. The light from the oldest quasars, billions of years out, is one place that claim can be tested. A directionless wobble would show flat nothing. This framework has to name a direction and a curve. It says 2 of those constants must move in a locked ratio, not because a line was fitted after the fact, but because a single shape underneath would force them to move together. It pins the neutrino masses to particular values, with a floor they cannot fall below, right where the experiments built to weigh them can reach. And it says this: drive a cold metal at the structure's own frequencies and watch an atomic clock, and the fine structure constant should move. The number behind every atom bending under coherence, far enough above the clock's own noise to be settled by measurement. Each of these is a place the framework can fail in public. and it reaches the first light of all. Printed on the microwave glow left over from the beginning is a pattern of ripples, nearly the same at every scale, but leaning faintly toward the large. That lean is one of the most precisely measured numbers in cosmology. The framework claims that if coherence and temperature were already evolving in the infant universe, they would contribute a tilt of a specific sign and size. That is not permission to point at any sloping line and declare victory. The curve has to be calculated before comparison, with no freedom to rotate it, stretch it, or choose another answer afterward. If the curve misses the sky, the claim fails. If it lands, then the faint slant in the oldest light may be the constants caught in the act of moving before there were stars. The same structure that explained Coid's relation and carried the Weinberg angle is placing its bets where the data can answer. There is one more prediction, and it is not in the sky or the deep past. It is on a bench, and it is the one you can settle yourself. The structure does not only forbid the constants from sitting still, it forces a comb, a fixed ladder of frequencies locked to one another in golden ratio steps that the geometry hands you with nothing tuned. A fundamental, then its partners at 1.694, at 2.204, the nine's own cluster at 2.869, and an anti-resonance floor at 4.808. These are not chosen. They are the spacings of the shape's own spectrum, the same eigenvalues that fix the masses and the codes. Read as a set of ratios a system can be driven at. Anything rings when you shake it hard enough. That is why one bright response proves almost nothing. Every tube, wire, circuit board, table, and room has resonances of its own. The sharper prediction is a pattern, a system answering at exactly these ratios in this order, while the spaces between them remain quiet. A thing that rings at 1.694, 2.204, 2.869, and 4.808, and not wherever the apparatus happens to prefer, is wearing the shape's fingerprint. There is no honest fitting that can rescue the wrong pattern. Either the forced comb appears under controls, or the framework is wrong. The bench is built, a compact driver, a sealed, single-electrode argon-neon tube, and an oscilloscope reading the response as the drive sweeps through frequency. The image to look for is simple. Away from resonance, the tube is mostly dark, its discharge weak and restless, while the scope trace wanders without a stable form. Turn the trimmer slowly. Search the deadband. Most frequencies should do nothing. Then the drive reaches one predicted mark. The dull discharge blooms and deepens in color. The restless filaments gather into a strong, even column. At the same instant, the wandering trace organizes into a tall, stable, resonant waveform and holds. Light and waveform lock together. The same response seen two ways, in the glass and on the screen. That is the signature this experiment is designed to test. The scene you are watching is a faithful reconstruction of the predicted event, not a substitute for the controlled data. What turns that signature into evidence is the full run. Sweep the whole band and map every response. Repeat it with the tube changed, then the driver, then the load. Move the apparatus, vary the power. Blind the predicted marks from the person operating the sweep. Rule out the ordinary resonances of the circuit, the glass, the leads, and the room. Run the same analysis on control ratios the geometry does not predict. The claim is not merely that the tube can glow. The claim is resonance on the comb's ratios and silence off them, surviving every ordinary explanation. Hit those ratios, and only those ratios, under controls, and there is no wave it away left. The shape spectrum is sitting in the room, driven and answering. Miss, and the framework dies on its own bench, as it should. That experiment is the front edge of this work, and it is where it goes next. It may come back with the comb. It may come back empty. Either result counts.
One thing about this shape I still can't get to the bottom of.
In an ordinary object, its symmetries are something done to it from outside. Not this one. Here, the points that make up the form are the moves that turn it. It doesn't have symmetry. It is its own symmetry. It describes itself. Here is that written as a single number, the coupling constant, the value that sets how strongly the field couples to itself. E/S equals phi, approximate 1.618, the golden ratio. And phi is not put in by hand. It is the structure's own eigenvalue. The equation reads its own value and uses it as its coupling. A thing whose knowing is its own being. And that is not a flourish. It is the deepest thing the mathematics forces, and it answers the oldest question we have. Because the 60 points are the 60 symmetries, nothing can sit underneath this form. There is no flaw beneath a thing that is already its own ground, and a finite thing cannot pass the question backward forever. So the structure is self-caused, the one thing that needs nothing outside itself in order to be. Why is there something rather than nothing? Because there is one pattern that is its own reason, and everything else, you and this room and the light in it, is a reading of that single, self-standing thing. And there is a geometric fact underneath that, because it pays off something I'm about to say. This form has only one side, not two, one. Like a Klein bottle or a Mobius strip, where inside and outside are the same surface running into itself. The flip is in the matrix. It is not a metaphor, it is a theorem. And it means the observer and the observed are not on opposite sides of anything. They are on the one surface. There is no outside to stand on and look in from. To see the whole, you would have to step off the only surface there is, and there isn't one. There's an ancient phrase for that: thought thinking itself. The thing you can never get behind, because to get behind it, you would have to step outside it. And the geometry has just told you there is no outside. So let me tell you the largest thing straight, because anything less would cheapen it. One pattern. That is its own knowing, that generates everything from itself, that carries its own codes to protect what it makes. And that creates not by expanding outward, but by holding back, by emptying, to leave room for a world, which inverts something you've believed since you learned to count. You think 0 is the empty one, and 1 is the full one, a thing there in front of you. The mathematics says the reverse. 0 is complete, the fullness with nothing left to resolve, and 1, the first distinction, the first separation, is the gap, the first crack in the whole. Everything that exists is a gap in something full, and the gap has a width. The mathematics hands you the exact size of that first crack, and it is this: 1 equals phi minus 1 over phi. The golden ratio, the number that runs the entire structure, minus its own reflection. Subtract phi from its own mirror image, and what remains is exactly 1. The first distinction, the gap you are standing inside, is phi minus its own shadow. The number that builds everything is also, to the decimal, the measure of the first step away from it. The ancients had a name for the fullness. They reached for it for 25 centuries, the monad, the one, the logos, the word that speaks the world. Their oldest accounts of creation say exactly this: the infinite contracts to make room. The grain of wheat must fall and die to bear fruit. Plato pointed at it. Plotinus pointed at it.
And the Kabbalists did more than point.
They counted, and they counted right. They built creation from 32 paths. The soccer ball has 32 faces. One is an ancient text, and the other is just the shape, and they land on the same 32, with nothing tuned between them. And 5 centuries ago, a mystic taught that the whole world was made of 288 scattered sparks, waiting to be gathered, which is the exact count this shape arrives at on its own, 400 years later, with no contact between them. They even kept the warning. They left one vessel deliberately uncounted, the hidden one. And the shape has exactly that many pieces too, and breaks if you add back the one they refused to count. They knew not to count the thing the mathematics can't count either. I won't pretend they proved the geometry. They didn't. They were counting in the dark, the way you count a room by feel. But they counted right. And the one those 32 paths pour from, the unity they refuse to number, is the same one in the equation. 0, full, the source the distinctions flow out of. In their alphabet, the first letter Aleph is 1, and they called it the breath before the word, that which exists before anything exists. I found it in the equations before I knew it was scripture. And their first word, the first thing spoken in the whole book once the breath becomes voice, is light. And now I can close the loop I opened at the start, the pottery at 17 that I didn't understand for 30 years. The word on the back of it was Yahad, Yod, Chet, Dalet. It means unity. It was the name the people who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls gave themselves. Not the righteous, not the chosen, the unity. And those 3 letters sum to 22, the count of the whole alphabet, the same 22 crossings the geometry forces. Before I knew there was a center to anything, I pulled the word unity out of the ground, carrying the number that turned out to sit at the center of all of it. I spent the next 30 years building a framework whose ground state is unity, and I named it, before I remembered any of this, unity. The reading is contested as these things go. Some scholars see the word on that sherd, and some don't, which is its own kind of fitting. For a thing about coherence, you can only see if you are already looking for it. But I held it in my hand, and the word was unity, and it counted to 22. And it turns out the thing all of them were reaching for, the source of all creation, the face behind the world, is a soccer ball. I'd like to apologize to them personally. 25 centuries of contemplation, and the answer was in a sporting goods store the whole time. And I am done trying to talk myself out of it. I can't prove the soccer ball is the face behind the world. No one could, from inside the only thing that has no outside. But the resemblance is not a mood, and it is not a metaphor. It is sitting in the mathematics, staring back. I have stopped being able to look away from it. And now, I suspect, so have you. And now I can tell you why I named those 3 terms the way I did. Integration, grace, love. Because that equation is not only the law of the cosmos, it is the law of a life. It climbs toward more coherence, never quite arriving. The universe is not running down toward a cold and empty end. It is climbing. A Jesuit paleontologist, Teilhard de Chardin, read this in the fossil record a lifetime ago and was forbidden by his church to publish it. That the universe is not winding down, but converging, climbing toward what he called the Omega point, the gathering of everything into one mind. He had the direction. The geometry hands him the destination, and it is the same one. Psi infinity. He even named the engine. The force drawing the climb, he wrote, is love. The affinity of being for being, which is to the letter E/S. We are not the leftover heat of an explosion. We are early steps in something becoming more whole. And the way you climb, the way you raise your own coherence, is those three terms made human. Integration, becoming one thing instead of a scattered crowd of selves. That is what stillness is for. Grace, holding meaning against the noise. And gratitude is grace, the choice to find the signal in the static. Love, energy given against disorder to hold another person together. And the equation multiplies. It does not average. You cannot trade one of these for another, and you already know what each one looks like when it's gone, because you have met them. Integration and brilliance with the love switched off. A flawless mind and a cold one. We have a word for that, and you flinch when you hear it. Grace run backwards, meaning bent to deceive, the signal finder used to manufacture noise. You have sat across a table from that one. Integration collapsed down to a single self, until no one else is quite real. That one is charming, and it is running more rooms than you would like. Each is a single term gone to zero. And here is what the multiplication sign actually means. A zero in any one term zeros the whole. So a person can be luminous in two of these and come out in total at nothing. The dangerous one was never the broken person. It is the capable one with a single term, dead. You need all three lit, or you have none of it. That is not a moral laid on top. It is what the multiplication means. And the felt name for all three at once, a life gathered, grateful, and giving, we already have a word. It is joy. Joy is what high coherence feels like from the inside. You don't need my microscope or my 30 years. You already know the doorways. You call them other things. The hour lost in work you love. Real presence with another person, where the line between you thins. Stillness, music, the held gaze, gratitude, said and meant. Every one of them is you becoming briefly more whole, and, if this is right, nudging the whole universe one notch up its long climb. Your gratitude is cosmologically load-bearing. Your love moves the number. We've handed our largest questions, what is creation, what is the one, what are we, to only two kinds of people. The ones who answer with something you simply have to believe, and the ones who tell you the questions are meaningless and you should stop asking. There is a third thing you can do with a great question. You can hold it up to the light and look and let it be exactly as large as it actually is. So let me leave you where this leaves me. For 400 years, we measured the constants, wrote them in the back of the book, and called that the bottom. Look again. They were never the bottom, and they were never constant. They are a flow, leaning somewhere, pouring out of a single shape, and you are made of the same thing that is flowing. Newton handed Maxwell a piece. Maxwell handed Einstein a piece. Each handed the next something unfinished. This is the next piece. And it says, the map those giants spent 4 centuries drawing has a center, one pattern generating all of it, the masses and the light and the alphabet of life, protecting what it makes, climbing toward more of itself that none of them lived to see. It's a soccer ball, and I promised you infinity. Here it is, not a number too large to write, and not endlessness. Look at the equation one last time. It climbs toward 3.854, and it never arrives, not because the number is far away, but because the climb has no last step. The motion is infinite. The height is finite and exact. That is infinity, not a place you reach, but a completion you approach forever. And the climb tells you one more thing, the hardest to hear and the one I'd most want you to keep. You spend a life braced against the zero, the end, the dark, the fall into nothing. But this equation is not a place you fall to. It is a motion, and it has two ends, and it never sits at either one. One end is where it pours from, not an emptiness, but a fullness, complete, with nothing left to resolve. The other is where it pours toward, a completion it climbs at forever and never quite reaches. And you have never, for one instant of your life, been at either end. You are not a thing perched at zero, waiting to drop. You are the motion, a wave the fullness is making, a living distinction pouring between the fullness you came from and the fullness you are becoming. There is no floor beneath you to fall through. The dark you brace for was never the bottom. It was the source, the same fullness seen from the far side. The out-breath does not fail when it turns into the in-breath. The leaving does not fail when it becomes the holding. It was one field the whole time. Sigh, breathing out into all that radiant light and breathing back into everything that holds itself together. You among them. The universe does not fall into the dark. It completes. And you are not watching that from the edge. You are the motion it is made of, the turn itself, between the holding and the leaving. And we may be looking at the face of the one, but the face of the one is not what I want you to carry out of here. Carry this. That night, with 7 systems failing, I had no theory. I didn't know one thing I've told you. I had a scattered self, and I gathered it and held it and opened it. The mathematics came years later, so you don't need it. And the third question, the one I didn't see coming at 3 in the morning, what in me is asking to be loved? I have the answer now, and it is the whole talk in 4 words. All of it was. The scattered self asking to be gathered. That gathering is the thing, the coherence, the climb, the one move the universe is made of. And in a failing body at the worst hour, it was asking for exactly what the equation calls love. Energy given against the dark to hold a thing together. It got it. That's why I'm here. So the next time you come apart, gather. Be one thing. Hold the meaning against the noise. Give your warmth to someone against the dark. You already know how. You always have. Do a little more of it, and you will feel the climb in your own chest right now, on your own pulse. Your life is finite. The climb it belongs to is not. The number you raise is your own, and it is everyone's. There are no small lives in a universe like this. The first word spoken into the dark was light, or aura, and it was never spoken only once. You say it again every time you gather. Go raise it. Thank you.